So this is Ben Sampson. I'm here with Dr. Sue um, from Seoul National, one of the leaders in laparoscopic living donation. And I'd like to thank all of our speakers, really fantastic talks. And there are a lot of questions. Since we only have 11 minutes before we get to the next session, I'm going to jump right into it. I was wondering, Dr. Shirky and Dr. Kwan, there are issues about training. How many cases need to be done in the context of a program? Do you have to do all of them living donor? And issues that Dr. Subrain brought up about biliary complications, particularly in the recipient. I was wondering if either of you would comment on these issues for minimally invasive donor hepatectomy.
Well, during the consensus guidelines, we couldn't come up with a threshold number of cases. But maybe Dave, who has started 2 programs, can tell us what he thinks about the number. Definitely, we, us and others, we started from scratch, and nowadays there are very active centers who do more than several hundreds a year, either lab or robotics, and this is where you should go and learn. And probably one of the important recommendations was no more. The time of self-training is over. That would be my response to that.
Thank you, Daniel, for your comment. I personally think many people underestimate the importance of establishing a firm laparoscopic program before starting a living donor program. When I first came to Cleveland, the laparoscopic program wasn't really that strong, so it took me 9 months to prepare the setup. I still recall easy left liver sections that I had to convert to open in cancer cases because the setup was not there. So I cannot emphasize the importance of having a strong laparoscopic program before launching a laparoscopic living donor. I think if you have the learning curve of open living donor established, and you have the learning curve of laparoscopic major hepatectomy in your institution, 10 cases, I don't think the numbers of how many living donors you do in your system, in your program is actually really that important. As Daniel said, you go to an institution where they have done it, then you'll fully understand how things are done, and you just come back and you don't have much learning curve there.
So definitely we insisted on the double expertise in both advanced laparoscopic liver surgery and LDLT living donor. So this is not a cancer cases. It's very different. You need to preserve both sides. So this is a whole different concept.
So I think those are important. Dual training, proctoring, the setting up the whole program are important concepts. I wonder, one thing that came out in the talks was a little bit of discussion or different opinions about biliary variants and whether or not they led to higher recipient complications, or if they were part of the learning curve. And this is for Dr. Kwan, since he was one of the authors of the paper and yet now is doing all of his cases 100% through a minimally invasive approach. If you might comment on whether or not you think biliary variant should, are there any cases to be avoided?
Well, now 100% of all donors are done laparoscopically. I think the main difference that I had back when I was at Samsung and now are 2 things. Back then I used to suture the remaining liver, the bile duct, which is technically not only difficult, but it's also, I think, you can have some micro leakage from the bile ducts. Now I double clip and I finish. But more importantly, I think the ICG technology is what I didn't have back in Korea. Nowadays, with the ICG technology, it's actually really easy to know where you're supposed to cut and where you're supposed to clip. And I think that has a tremendous effect. I have 0 biliary complication in the donors from my series. So I think that is very important.
Okay, there's a question in the chat about pringling during donor hepatectomy, and wonder that any one of the panelists feel like taking that.
So, well, I usually use an Pringle maneuver during my laparoscopic liver sections, including donor hepatectomy. But in our study, actually, this is a pilot study, that there was no significant differences between the Pringle group and non-Pringle group. So, and it's okay. It's a Pringle maneuver. Have a good and so. Provided a good operative field and less bleeding and whatever. Yes, it's a very good end procedure, I think.
I noticed for Dr. Boring, you had a large increase over time in living donor utilization in your program, and do you think that is due to laparoscopy or minimally invasive surgery and being able to offer it for everybody?
This is a multifactorial thing. It's not only contributed to minimally invasive donor hepatectomy, but it's a part of it, because now the families are easier to accept the donation, but it's also that they overall see the good outcome of living donation. It's not only about minimal invasive donor hepatectomy. If the recipient outcome is good, then also you're getting more referrals, and people and hepatologists are convinced also to apply living donation in high MELD score and acute hepatic failure. So it's a multifactorial thing, but yes, doing minimal invasive is convincing recipients to accept the surgery in their young children.
Yeah, I have one question to Daniel. Daniel, there?
Yeah.
Yes. We included hybrid hepatectomy, hybrid operation in our consensus. So in the area of now pure laparoscopic hepatectomy, do you think still hybrid technique is feasible or okay operation, or we should stop the hybrid or not?
So the consensus on that specific question is that it was an acceptable technique in its own right, but it's been used by most as a first step towards pure lap, as it was your case, and it's been our experience before. When we did the first left lateral, we did it pure lap, because left lateral is not a problem. But when we started doing full left, full right, we started with hybrid, because we found it also long and difficult to do the transection, and especially if you refuse to use Pringle. But at the end of the day, I think it's a surgeon's preference. But when you look at the current literature, it's only pure lap or robotic, which is also pure lap. In my opinion, robotic is a tool that we may discuss that later, but definitely I think that robotic is a pure lap operation, except with a robot.
Okay, and another question to the Dr. Boring. Maybe you don't have any experience in some digester, like bleeding from IVC, some huge bleeding. In case of during robotic operation, if there is some kind of case, so you can just quickly open the abdomen, removing the lower the arm. Is it possible to, I think it takes time to remove some robotic arms and then open the abdomen. In laparoscopy case, if there is I don't like that case, but if there is some digester, I can just open right away and then control the bleeding. So what do you think about that?
So number one, you are right that you can control with two instruments on arm number 1 and 3 the bleeding. So we encountered bleeding, but immediately you can grab the holes in the cava with the Maryland dissectors or the dissectors you have, and you close them. And then you stitch them. You do the same what you would do in open surgery. You grab the bleeding with the forceps, And
I know, but if
And stitch it.
it's happen to open, I mean.
yeah, so number one, you can control it like in open surgery. Number two, if you really have to convert, we never had this situation that we had to convert like in an emergency situation. We just converted once in a right lobe donor. This was in the early phase where we felt it's maybe safer. We were not 100% sure about the anatomy, and then it was a controlled, safe, then continuation of the surgery openly. But you can, if it's there in an emergency situation, you can within seconds, you can deconnect and the robot and get it away. So this is it takes only 10 seconds to just push the robot away. So this should not be an issue and a disadvantage compared to laparoscopic. The new XI system is very disconnecting and connecting friendly.
Okay, one question to Dr. Kwon, and do you use a 3D or 2D or flexible or rigid? Is Dr. Kim and Dr. Kwon?
Well, I use what I used to use in Samsung, the 3D flexible scope. It's the same format, and I think there was actually a question on the comments, but I think the 3D scope is what makes the learning curve of robotic easier in many cases. Of course, there's the flexible motions of the wrist, but what I realized, having tried help many places start a program, is the learning curve for 3D scope is so much faster. Like when I'm training here, my other two colleagues, they've caught the laparoscopic a lot faster than they have been struggling for the last 10 years just by having the 3D scope. I think that's one of the key things.
And you have a special scopist for you?
No, I don't. That is a system that I used to have back at Samsung, and I think it's very important to have a good scopist. But in the United States, unlike Korea, where it's there is less effort on education, here it's like everything is about education. So I learned to become a lot more patient in Korea. But then again, it's trainable, it's teachable. It's just it takes a little bit longer. But I think throughout the 2 years that I've been in Cleveland, a lot of people have caught up on using how to use the scope, learning how to set up the laparoscopy. And my two other colleagues now are doing almost by themselves major appendectomies.
Dr. Kim, do you use 3D or 2D?
How about Kim? What do you use? KH Kim.
I used an rigid type and 30 degree. So I don't like a flexible and type. So but the rigid type is okay. So because then I have a good and scopist.
Okay.
Do you have more time, or just we have to finish? Or I don't know.
I have a question to Dr. Burning.
We should talk robotics versus lab. I mean, we cannot avoid that.
2 more
Yeah.
minutes.
I have a question to Dr. Burning about robotic, which is something that always was a difficult part for me because I did robotic in the very early years. And one thing that I realized in robotic is you need a good assistant. And at that time when I was at Samsung, I did not have a good assistant. And when I saw your videos, a lot of the clippings, a lot of the staplers were done by the assistant and not by yourself. And I think that can be a problem in institutions where you're the sole surgeon that has to carry on to do everything. How do you manage around that issue?
By having a team. So I don't agree to the concept that one surgeon is doing the procedure. It's a team approach. And it should not be done with a fellow or with alone and with a resident. This is maybe an American way, but I don't like it. It should not be done like this.
So you mean it's a 2 senior surgeon surgery, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Have you ever used CUSA in robotic surgery? Your assistants using CUSA, and you can find a way to go to CUSA. It's another way to do hepatectomy. Dr. Boroi?
we
Yes, I
tried
did.
we tried it in the beginning, as I mentioned also in my presentation. We had really big reservations to do the procedure without the CUSA. This was my biggest worry, like for every surgeon who's used to. But then again, so while using the harmonic, built-in harmonic, and we more and more did not miss the CUSA. And we don't feel there is a need for the CUSA in living donor surgery. There is some if you do cancer surgery and you have curved dissection planes, it's different. But in this very straight dissection planes we are dealing with in living donation, they are relatively easy dissection planes, just straight and anatomical, so you don't miss a CUSA.
I would just like to just make a quick comment to Dieter. You can definitely mobilize the right lobe smoothly on pure laparoscopy. I'm a pure laparoscopist, and you're but I think that both you can do both in the same fashion. And at the end of the day, it will boil down to the availability of the robot and mainly a surgeon's preference. Some people mentioned that the easier learning curve or shorter learning curve makes a big difference, and that you don't need to acquire the laparoscopic skills. I think it would be a mistake not to acquire the laparoscopic skills. I don't think it should be a shortcut. This doesn't mean that robotic is not good. Robotic is probably very good. It's just that laparoscopic skills make you a better robotic surgeon, probably.
This has been a great discussion and a great session. I think we should continue this at the gala dinner this evening. Oh, wait a minute. In 2 years, but there's a fantastic session next, and I hope you all will stay and pay attention. Thank you.